Hey everyone, JL here, and welcome back to Bridge the Divide. Firstly, I have to apologize for the length of time that it took to get this video out. When it comes to the topic of theism and atheism, when the conversation abandons naturalism, materialism, and empiricism and moves into the abstract realm of metaphysics, things can get very, very complicated. Because the lines between subjectivity and objectivity can become so blurred in this topic, I needed to consult with some other individuals to ensure that how I was approaching this was as intellectually honest as possible. Also, some events took place during my research that altered the initial scope of it. Secondly, I apologize as well in advance because while I intended this to be a somewhat humorous take, the subject matter gets a bit darker than I anticipated. As many of you know, I really enjoy discoursing on theism, debating theists, woo believers, and examining theist claims to showcase the irrationality of their thinking and how that irrational thinking can lead to irrational behavior that can affect the people that they share the world with. I do this not to try and convert anyone or specifically to trash theists of any cut. I do this for the audience listening. I do this to expose the illogical nature and irrationality of the theist position. Whether it's circular arguments, intellectual dishonesty, or the many logical fallacies committed in support of their irrational positions, or worse, their unjustifiable behavior. Normally, these encounters go rather well. I had a debate with a theist on the plot hole that was very cordial. You can check that out in the link below. Sometimes, though, they can be kinda rough.
John 5:31. If I
Shouting me down will not work.
I alone bear witness about myself, my testimony is not deemed true. That tells followers to go out and do these works. But Romans 14:22, that faith that you have, keep between yourself and God. That means keep it to yourself and keep it secret. So which are you following? It is contradictions like this that are rife through your immoral book.
Now, in my journey, I've encountered some truly piss-poor examples of humanity. Homophobes, transphobes, racists, misogynists, con artists, and other abysmal trash heaps disguised as human beings. And while there isn't much that really gets me riled up, a surefire way to do it is to either misrepresent my position or gish-gallop positive claim after positive claim with zero demonstrable evidence to support any of them. This all being said, we now come to the purpose of this video, and it's the absolutely toxic, destructive, skin-crawling abomination known as Darth Dawkins. Some of you may know him personally and have even had the misfortune to engage with him in one of the many Discord servers that he squats in. Some may have only heard of him by reputation or through videos like the ones created by Tom Rabbitt. And for others, this will be your introduction. For that, I am deeply sorry. Darth Dawkins, a tongue-in-cheek slight at prominent atheist Richard Dawkins, has gone by many names throughout his 10-year history of attacking atheists, including Evolution False, EF, DD, Mauling Atheism, and Duncan Atheism. Darth Dawkins is currently his favorite. Darth classifies himself as a fundamentalist, presuppositional Christian apologist.
I hate the wickedness of America and all the sin worshippers who populate it. I'm not grieved by those that rise up against thee. I hate them with a perfect hatred.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. In short, Darth is, and I use the term very lightly, a Christian that believes the Bible is fundamentally true and accurate in all things, like God creating light before the sun and stars, Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, talking snakes, talking donkeys, talking trees, and burning bushes.
Giggity, giggity.
He also fights to defend his Christianity against any and all objections.
I kick ass for the Lord.
As he believes not only that God exists, but that he has somehow proven God beyond a shadow of a doubt through the use of the laws of logic applied within the philosophy of metaphysics.
How did you do that, my son?
That's a damn good question. Darth also believes that he accomplishes this with screaming rants that are usually homophobic.
Oh, good. I'll turn you down to 1%, fag.
Transphobic.
Are you sure you're not? Are you sure you're not a tranny? Because you sure argue like a hysterical woman.
Misogynistic.
This is a woman who has no self-control when she gets emotional.
and chock full of insults and ad homs intended to denounce his opponents with assertions that they are being deliberately argumentative.
Now you're going to plan B to be belligerent, obnoxious, and argumentative.
That they are absolutely ignorant or moronic.
Hey, moron.
Or that they are deceitful, pathological liars.
He's a fake, a phony, and he's a fraud, and he's a pathological liar.
So the question remains, why would anyone in their right mind want to engage with someone who argues solely in bad faith?
You're done. We're going to move on. You're a moron. This is why it's so problematic talking with people who are morons.
Someone who refuses to answer questions by screaming not to be overtalked.
It wasn't intended to. Don't overtalk me. Don't overtalk me.
Someone whose only goal is to pander to his slavering, borderline psychotic sycophants.
What a pathological liar. Now, did anybody hear an answer to my question? Did that address my question?
A person so utterly poisonous, so close-minded, so implicitly intellectually dishonest.
Honestly, I have no fucking idea.
Most do it for the laughs, some for the dumpster fire joy. But there are some, like myself, that aim to prove not to Darth, but to the silent minority listening, that he and his followers' positions may not be as objectively true as they claim they are. So let's take a deeper look into the acidic cesspool that is Darth Dawkins. Darth pretty much begins every argument asking one extremely bad question. How is there no God? The reason this is a bad question is because of its loaded terminology. The word how implies some sort of functionality, demanding the atheist answer to the systemic function of something that there is no evidence for. Should one be able to logic their way past that, Darth will inevitably ask his big gotcha question. What is the universal ultimacy that instantiates facts, grounds all causal relationships, and determines what is possible and impossible? From there, he'll begin to work his way down a specially designed apologetics script. This script is chock full of very specific terminology, each one chosen for their wide range of contextual definitions. Terms such as ultimacy, absolute, reality, special, natural, revelation, instantiate, and truth. The tactic here is designed to confuse and keep opponents' definition-specific argumentations off balance as Darth slowly alters his own definitions as he moves from context to context. His script is also ripe with loaded questions that he will only accept yes or no answers to, while the questions, depending upon that shifting context, may not have clear yes and no answers. This forces his interlocutors into specific, often disingenuous answers, which is a tactic used to ultimately entrap them into a position that Darth will then refer to as absurd or incoherent.
The triune God of the Christian scriptures who exists, who created this world, has revealed himself through natural revelation, all of creation. The heavens declare the glory of God, Psalm 14, Romans 1. And he is the necessary preconditions for all viability of facts and intelligibility of facts, and the denial of which leads to complete metaphysical collapse and unintelligibility, absurdity.
And yes, at this point, the atheist argument is absurd, because so long as the atheist follows Darth's script, Darth's argumentation and demand to only accept specific answers ensures this conclusion. And because often the atheist has no interest in being banned from the server, they will often let Darth run roughshod all over them. Usually, just to be banned for the trouble.
Okay, bye-bye!
Now, typically in these arguments, atheists, in an effort to ensure that they speak from a rational, intellectually honest position, will appeal to evidence, the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid, such as the empirical observations of the universe, the demonstrable descriptive laws of reality, or the many novel predictive models that we use to understand the difference between what is real and what is imaginary.
Bet those science chicks really dig that large cranium of yours, huh?
But the evidence doesn't matter to Darth. He will often assert the Aquinas argument from contingency, that understanding or knowing anything about the universe, even the instantiation of facts themselves, all require a primary ultimacy for those facts to be derived from. Something that keeps the order of those facts. Some lawgiver that gave the laws. That for the laws of logic to even exist would require a supremely powerful mind.
It's over 9,000!
And Darth is not absolutely wrong in this metaphysical hypothesis.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Well, there very well could be some grand divine being out there who kicked the football on the universe and then fucked right off.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Thanks, dude. The problem is, such a grand divine being remains undetectable in this universe. There is no evidence of such a thing's interaction with this reality, much less even its existence. And while the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, it still holds the same logical value as non-existence until such evidence is put forward. It is essentially a value of zero, and therefore any conclusions drawn from that value are necessarily unjustified and wholly irrational. Now, if you were even to get to this point, Darth will either flip out and ban you, scream at you until you walk away, or if he doesn't possess kick power on the server, run away himself, citing technical issues, or he'll just sit there quietly and ignore everything you say.
Do you like...
And we're going to continue.
Do not overtalk me.
And this is because Darth forgets one very simple flaw in his entire argument: the axiom. Axioms are statements or propositions which are regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true. Like the meat tube is a foundational part of that which is Team Skeptic, axioms are equally foundational. Darth's axiom is God exists, therefore. From that foundation, he builds his worldview, but already we can see many issues here. Because while an axiom is unjustified and cannot be disproven outright, they can be internally critiqued for a lack of intellectual honesty regarding the extremity of their magnitude. An axiom should be open to new information as it arrives. If your axioms are intractable, they can entrap you in poor reasoning or illogical, irrational positions because they would not allow for the study or testing of contradictory evidence. Darth's axiom refuses to address such issues as God is a moral monster, the problem of evil, Averroes' paradox of the stone, the veracity of miracles, and the lack of objective truth of any religion. If someone is able to boil down Darth's arguments beyond the esoteric semantics of subjective metaphysics, and has not been kicked or banned at this point, it becomes apparently clear there is an impasse.
Now let me pass.
No.
And this is because it serves nothing to argue axioms. Axioms by their nature are subjective. They are not by definition justified or rational. And Darth will never concede that his God presupposition is equal in its unjustification to any atheist I exist proposition. It is at this point it becomes absolutely clear that it is pointless to speak with Darth Dawkins, much less argue with him, if the intention is anything beyond watching a slow-motion train wreck. If the debate is about the social behaviors of believers or the unjustified positions of theists regarding education, healthcare, or politics, then sure, that would be fine. But the moment you get into the subjective weeds of metaphysics, with both positions being necessarily unjustified, the debate stops. And that is because God is an unfalsifiable hypothesis. It is an answer inserted into the gaps of our knowledge, the presupposed answer for questions we don't yet have answers for. Once you've reached the questions of what exists beyond demonstrable reality, what came before the Planck time, or the mechanism by which the fundamental elements that compose life first joined together to kickstart what we have on this planet, we simply do not have those answers. Yet. But Darth and his ilk will presume that the answer is a God. But their circular reasoning, such as God is true because of the Bible, which is true because of God, is simply so fallacious, it is insufficient for any atheist to accept such a claim. Darth, however, will never accept this. He will never accept that he could be wrong about his entire position. He will never accept anything that derails his script, and if something does, he simply bans anyone who challenges him with a question that he cannot answer. With all this stated, I will say that I have had some decent conversations with a few of Darth's sycophants, so long as Darth is not around. If he is around, however, his presence will embolden them to act as he does, and that is simply no fun for anyone. I have, however, engaged directly with Darth in the past. One exchange was rather unexpected as he kind of injected himself into a conversation I was having with someone else, which is why I wasn't really prepared to record it. He challenged my assertion that the Bible was not evidence for anything verifiable. I stated that an example was the incorrect science stated in the book. He asked me for one example of this, and I stated the order of creation as presented in Genesis. He asked me, how did I know it was incorrect? And I responded that we can observe it empirically today, and there's no evidence, direct or indirect, that suggests that the order was ever different in the past. His response was that it was the most ignorant answer he'd ever heard in his life. I responded that just because he thinks it's ignorant doesn't mean it's incorrect. And then he asked me how old I was, which of course is completely irrelevant. He then continued to berate me until I walked away. Darth's intention was to incite me by insulting me, and then when that didn't work, he went for the ad hom attack setup by asking me my age. Because just because you're an old fuck means you know more than everybody else, right?
Right.
He never once refuted my argument, discredited my position, or even bothered to steelman it. That is because Darth's only tactic is to use bad logic to shift the burden of proof from himself to me. His goal is merely to try and trick any atheist that he interacts with into making the positive claim that God does not exist, so he can call them out for a lack of evidence. And this is Darth arguing purely in bad faith, and thinking he's getting away with it. He's not interested in speaking on equal footing. He's not interested in an exchange of ideas. He's not even interested in hearing what anyone has to say. So at this point, I have decided that it is pointless to ever engage with this asshole again.
Jogger.
Now, all joking aside, I honestly think that Darth's persistently vile behavior is indicative of greater mental health problems. He is possessed by a deep-seated rage, a rage developed over decades of truly unfortunate life circumstances. And so, like any bully, he turns that rage against anyone who does not see the world he does or accept it by his terms. And even though he's demonstrated that he has been the primary agency behind most of his unfortunate circumstances, I pity him. I pity what appears to me to be a self-imposed, miserable, and lonely existence. And while he viciously attacks the LGBTQ community, liberals, progressives, democratic socialists, Catholics, the media, and even Hollywood, his prime targets are atheists. And I think it's because he knows that atheists, by and large, approach the world with as little bias and as much honesty as possible. Because atheists tend to have a good understanding of, and are not really conflicted about, the seemingly chaotic and random nature of the universe. Because atheists are free to question the world, to critically analyze the evidence, to use that to make the world a better place for others, and will never cease in doing so. Because atheists are interested in what we can determine to the best of our abilities, objective truths, and not just the personal ones that make us feel better. And Darth Dawkins, the lonely, angry, toxic, cowardly, cellar-dwelling abomination of a man, is only interested in his own fucking self. This piece of shit and Daniel Pratt are fucking made for each other.
I wanna kiss you all over. Dun, dun, dun. Till the night closes in. Till the night closes in.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deconstruction of Darth Dawkins. I truly hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to like and subscribe. Be sure to hit that bell for notifications. Any questions, comments, or criticism, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Your feedback consistently helps me to improve, and I love interacting with all of you. Also, if you dig horror films, feel free to check out my podcast, Week in Horror, where we deep dive horror movies that released chronologically that week. Whether a filmmaker or just a fan, we have something for everyone. And if you'd like to and are able to support either my efforts here or the efforts over on our podcast, you can hit our PayPal or check out our many benefits on Patreon. All the links will be in the description. I'm very close to 500 subscribers so far. Now, if I hit 500, I will be doing an AMA. I'll set that up, you'll get the notification. It should be a fun one. Thank you all for your continued support. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together, we can bridge the divide.